Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, and a very good morning to everyone. YABhg, Vice Chancellor, University Technology Petronas, members of the academic staff, guests, students, the press, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I would like to say thank you to UTP for this invitation to talk on a subject which I cannot claim I'm an expert in. But still, since I've been asked to talk, like all politicians, talking is our business. So I will try to fill in what I can about this very important subject regarding, or they've taken away the evolution in Malaysia and what next. Now when we talk about evolution, obviously we are talking about changes taking place in society. And when we talk about changes taking place in society, we need to know the situation before, the current situation, and what we think the future will be like. There is continuity. It's not something isolated. The past is one item, the present another thing all by itself, and the future is totally divorced from what is happening now. Society continues, and the way society behaves, the culture, the value systems and all that evolve over time. So to know what is in the future, we need to look into the past, we need to examine the present, and therefore we may make a guess as to what will happen in the future. Now, I've been quite fortunate in that I have had quite a long period of time to observe changes taking place in the society in Malaysia, the social changes. We in Malaysia are always affected by outside influences, because Malaysia is in a way unique because it is a multiracial country, multiracial society. And each one of these societies have their own contribution towards the whole of the Malaysian social structure. Now, we all began, of course, by the peninsula being people almost exclusively by the indigenous people, the Malays. And they developed their own culture. Of course, it's also influenced by their beliefs. Prior to their becoming Muslims, they were enemies, or they professed the Hindu religion. So that influenced them. And it still influences them today, because we find a lot of Malays still believing in all kinds of invisible creatures, ghosts, jambalang, palisade, and the like. We believe in those things, and because we believe in them, we live in fear of them. We haven't got rid of that fear just yet. Many of us are still influenced by the fear of unknown things. That is why we find, for example, among young Malay girls, a tendency towards hysteria. Suddenly they go into a kind of trance and they scream and they say something is influencing them. But this is actually the result of their beliefs. But that is jumping ahead. What I would like to say is that initially the culture of this country was that of the Malays generally, and they developed a kind of civilization centered around the leader. And the leader is acknowledged by them as their Raja, their ruler. And of course, when they became Muslims, they changed from Raja to Sultans. But their life is centered around the palace. And they developed a very strict code of ethics, code of behavior, which is influenced by the palace. So much so that we see among the Malays two different languages. One language for the common people and one language for the Raja. You mandi, they bersiram. But the process, of course, is the same. But the words are different. We have to use special words because to distinguish them from us. And the need for us to conform to the ethical codes developed around the palace gives us a certain character, a character that is quite different from others, because we are actually, from the very beginning, very feudalistic. We believe in the right of the Raja to rule. And there was no idea about democracy and the things like that. It is the right of the Raja to rule. That was a system that we developed by ourselves, the Malays. And in those days, of course, the government is the ruler, which is why we talk about the kerajaan, the situation of having a Raja, kerajaan. But if you go to Indonesia, they won't call the government kerajaan. They call their government pemerintah. The people who, well, perintah, who direct things that should be done within society. But in Malaysia, we still talk about kerajaan, although, of course, we have changed, because today we don't have monarchs with absolute authority. But our perception, our concept of government is still that of a certain body that is very superior, very high above, that we must obey. And that shaped our culture. And if you see, you study the Malay culture, you will find them having all kinds of sayings, pepatah Melayu, all kinds of sayings to guide them in their life. In any situation, this is how you think, this is what you do. Always you're governed by the adat. And of course, eventually we introduced laws, and when we became Muslims, of course, we adopted Islamic laws for the country. But even then, we never really forgot our original native beliefs in animism, in Hinduism even. So that was the community into which came foreign people, people from China, basically from India. They came here not to stay here. They came here to earn a living and then go home to their own country. That was the original intention. But of course, when they come in here, they brought with them their own culture, their own beliefs, their own system, their own methods. And like it or not, the Malays have to absorb and practice some of these things that are brought in by the foreigners, mainly from India and from China. So already there is a mixed culture. a social system that is different, that is a mixture of three different races with their own culture. And then, of course, we were colonized by the Europeans. The Portuguese came to Malaysia in 1509, and 1511 they conquered Malacca, but the Portuguese influence was confined largely to Malacca, although to this day Portuguese words are found in the Malay language. Almari, for example, is a Portuguese word. Manteiga, keju. These are things that are inherited by us and became a part of our culture, our system, our beliefs, because of 100 years of Portuguese rule. That was followed by the Dutch. The Dutch left some impression, but not much. But the most influential people were the British. They came in through treaties with the rulers, and they introduced new ideas, new methods, new thinking, new organizations, and we accept them unquestioningly. Of course, we retain our own cultures to a certain extent, but we gradually become more and more Eurocentric. Our society becomes Eurocentric. Whatever change that takes place in Malaysia, within Malaysian society, is influenced, has been influenced by what happened in Europe. We do this thing almost automatically, but we don't really resist, because many of the changes brought by the Europeans were good changes. We have better organization, for example, in the government. During the time of feudal rulers, the taxes collected were for the ruler, not for the government, but for the ruler. And the ruler can then give some money for the development of the state, for whatever administrative needs that you may have. It is the ruler's money. The tax goes directly to the rulers. But when the British came, the tax goes to a new body called the Treasury. And the money is then used to pay even the ruler. Even the ruler gets a pay coming from the Treasury. So this is a very major change in terms of organization, in terms of values, in terms of attitude, from being totally feudal, autocratic monarch. We now have rulers who are paid a salary, are given certain pertinences, but they are not really the owners of all the wealth that is generated within the country. So that is a very major change, and that was a good change, because in the past, obviously there was no order in terms of how the money is expended. I come from Kedah, and I know what happened in Kedah during the feudal era. The money was collected by civil servants, who are actually servants of the rulers. They collect the money, and they are supposed to deliver the money collected as taxes to the ruler. But of course, somewhere along the way, some of the money disappeared. And the ruler got just a small amount of money. And rulers need money all the time, and they are not happy with the small amount of money that they receive because of the taxes that are pocketed along the way before reaching the ruler. Now, along comes Kapitan China, the leader of the Chinese in the state of Kedah. I'm talking about Kedah. I'm not going to insult other states, but I think I can insult Kedah because I'm from Kedah anyway. So Kapitan China came along. Of course, Kapitan China is very close to the ruler because of his generosity. So he told the ruler that if you give him a tax monopoly, give him the right to collect the taxes, he guarantees that he will pay the ruler a bigger sum of money. And of course the ruler agreed, and indeed, when the Kapitan China collects the taxes, the amount he pays to the ruler is much bigger than what the ruler used to get. So this is one lesson about corruption. You know, when you are corrupt, in the end you lose everything because you don't get the rights to collect the taxes anymore, and you cannot even pocket some of it. Of course, how much the Kapitan China pockets is his business, but I'm quite sure he also pockets some. But his collection was much bigger, and the Sultan or the ruler was very happy about it. Subsequently, the Kapitan China was also given a monopoly to sell opium. And now, today we talk about opium as drug, and drug addiction is something we don't want to see in our society, but during feudal times, opium was a source of income for the ruler, for the government.